Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Rangers review. Myself and Stevie Clifford here to talk through Motherwell 2, Rangers 2. Stevie, we were on after the St Mirren game on Boxing Day, and I know we do make this joke quite a lot, but I think you could kind of copy and paste the discussion we had then up until now, because Rangers fall further behind. I think that's 14 points behind after 18 games. Clement again made some surprising choices in his lineup and changed that at half time. But, by that point, Rangers were working against a lead established by the opposition, and that made it all the more difficult. And I thought, as well, like the St Mirren game, Stevie, once Rangers did equalise, and we'll come on to how they got themselves back into the game, namely through Hamza Egeman's kind of individualism. Once they did get back into the game, what should have been 10 minutes of Rangers camping around the Motherwell box and really kind of pushing the dial in their favour, again, they weren't able to do that. I felt, I don't know what you felt, and I'll put it to you, but I felt like the intensity kind of dropped when Rangers got an equaliser, and it's another away game in which Rangers' performance hasn't been great. That's been the case for a lot of the season. Over these past two games, I think the results have really caught up on a fact that has existed throughout the course of the season. I'll put it to you.
Yeah, of course it has. I think a lot of what I'm going to say is my own opinion, but if you select that 11, Joshua, you cannot possibly be shocked when they turn in a 45 minutes like they did. It was entirely predictable. I don't know one person on social media or otherwise who texted me and said that's an okay team. Every single one of us were shocked at the lineup he selected. A lot of the selection and things that he said fly completely in the face of other things that he said to us. Players can't play every game. Players need time to build up. Players need game time. And then all of a sudden, Oscar Cortez, who I sat and watched at a B team game a couple of weeks ago with Johnny and warned that he needed months before he would be ready, gets hooked at half-time. Cyril Dessers, who we know isn't what is required, hooked at half-time. I think that is in the region now of 27 changes before 50-odd minutes in Rangers games this season. How many times is the man going to get selection wrong before we actually encounter the biggest issue, which is him himself? So, I'm sorry, but it was entirely predictable. The players even looked somewhat, I don't even know how to describe it, deflated by what they had around them as well, because it just wasn't happening. It was the same style of play that we've seen before, which is slow, which is passive, which is really difficult to watch. And this away record now, what we now going on to 4 wins in 13, 14 away games now, it's miles away, 1 point away from St Mirren and Motherwell in the last couple of days, with absolutely no disrespect to them. But he's very quick to tell us about budgets when it comes to Tottenham and Celtic. Well, the budgets in these games are the exact same in the other direction. So I'm afraid, Joshua, that my patience and my ability to look at it kind of rationally is kind of fading a lot, I'm afraid. So, in my opinion, there's a lot of home truths to be said here.
Yeah. We'll get through as many comments as we can. Obviously, tons to cover, Stevie. But let's start first with the team. James Skend, friend of the show, says, "Why the medical staff picking the team?" Now, myself and Chris spoke before the game, Stevie, about I agree with you. The surprise, not only that Cortez starts the game and played, I don't know what did he play, an hour tonight. But he hadn't come on at the weekend. Dowell comes in for his first start in a number of months. And it was also the second time in as many games where Clement, the two players that he didn't pick, so it was Raskin and Danilo against St Mirren, and tonight it was Egeman and Cherney. They both came on for the players he'd kind of rotated in, if you like. And I don't think Clement helps himself with speaking about the medical staff, because maybe if a manager says we just need to rotate or it's about tiredness, then the narrative is slightly different. without being maybe too over the top, and I don't think Clement's ever really had that strongest team. And his team selections have always been quite unpredictable, and I think that's really went against him in these two matches, Stevie, because by the time that Egerman and Cherney do come on tonight, Rangers are already a goal down. Oh no, was it 2-0 at half time? It was 2-0 at half time, wasn't it? 2-0 down against St Mirren. Similarly, by the time that Danilo comes on and Raskin comes on, Rangers are chasing the game instead of it being at 0-0. But this, I guess, isn't, again, it's not something that's maybe exclusive to these two games. But as you say, I think when everyone saw that team, there was quite a lot of surprise right across the board at those selections.
There's a lot of anger about the things that he said, Joshua, because they fly in the face of things that he said earlier. He was very big, and you'll remember this, and myself and Chris witnessed it on several occasions on his very first press conferences. He made a massive deal of telling us how unfit these players were, and he was going to implement a regime where they could withstand 3 games a week and they could play in every game and they would be ready to do this. We're now at December and he's telling us that Cherney and Hamza Egerman are not fit enough and are not ready to play games. Now, they're either fit enough to play 45 minutes and come on, or they're not fit enough at all, or they're tired, whatever. Start them and then bring them off. You give them an uphill task every single time, just like midweek. And you made a comment that I slightly want to refer to.
Yeah.
We equalised at 68 minutes. There was 22 minutes left plus 10 minutes of injury time, and we did nothing with it. Aside of a Danilo late effort that went over, they don't look fit enough to push on and kick on. They don't have what appears to have the control or the desire to. We play in bursts, in little spells, and we rely on individuals, as you've seen. Hamza Egerman dug us out completely today to get a point. But the things that this is why people are so fed up of what he's saying, because other things contradict his output. And when you hear him say that the players themselves are telling him, he said beforehand, sports scientist guys told me that the players aren't ready to start the game and we have to go with that. But the players themselves are telling me, he said he's not ready to play but can affect it from half time and things. What is going on there that we have players that are saying, no, I don't want to play today and things like that? That for me is a massive issue amongst other massive issues that we have. And it's just, do you know what? It's so disappointing, and I think people are just fed up. I'm certainly fed up of things that he's saying, and it doesn't make any sense. And we, excuse me, to go back to the point that James made about medical staff picking the team, shouldn't happen, should it? And he certainly shouldn't allude to it that this is what's going on.
Yeah. Rangers went 2-0 down in the first half, Stevie. I mean, we'll get to the overarching what this means, what it could mean, that where Clement's job stands, because comment here from if I can find it, from William, saying, I've got a question, how many points is the tipping point for the board, because I don't remember ever being 14 behind before the new year. I mean, the reality is, Stevie, that Rangers are, this season was always going to be, I don't think there was an expectation generally that Rangers were going to win the league, for a number of reasons. However, you only get away, and I think this has been a consistent point, you only get away with a long-term strategy if you see short-term improvement. And Rangers away form, away performances, away results haven't got better. I agree with you. I think that we spoke about this before the game as well, because they're quite a direct team, Rangers. I think often they can struggle to control games, and that's why you get a match like today where if it goes 2-2 on 68 minutes, as I say, you should spend a lot of time surely around the opposition box. There wasn't really many opportunities beyond that, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, again, Rangers are an erratic team at points in the final thirds, who are very reliant on crosses, and it had to rely on Hamza Egerman with 2 fantastic finishes to get them back into the game. But this is a performance, Stevie, that I don't think has moved on from, Aberdeen a couple of months ago. I don't think St Mirren had moved on much from from Kilmarnock a couple of months ago, and Rangers had those 2 really damaging defeats back to back. And again, to throw it back to you, you go back to that point that supporters won't take the short-term pain of any club, let alone a club like Rangers who should be winning, if they don't think that this is going to be a long-term winning strategy. And I think at the moment people are watching that performance today and they're thinking, is that better than what Rangers were putting up away from home 3, 4, 5 months ago?
And the answer is it's not.
Hmm.
That's a problem when we talk about, and a lot of reference is always made to Steven Gerrard when we talk about, we need to be patient and things like that. Let's not forget that at this point in the season, Steven Gerrard had Rangers level, a couple of points behind, going top into games over the New Year period. And every season, I think he was actually there. The fall off in the first 2 years came later. Now, I'm not expecting Philippe Clement to put a team together that is winning the league. I don't think that's viable at this moment in time, especially given what the summer. But Joshua, within absolutely, I think it's fair to expect a level of performance. First of all, the football has got to be better than it is individually and collectively. They look at times like they haven't seen each other or been coached before. And we'll go to points in the game, but that third goal that they conceded, which thankfully was offside, was horrendous on the eye. And there's moments like that that continuously happen. I think that we haven't seen we've seen a couple of games where they've looked okay. Ross County away, maybe Kilmarnock at home, Nice away, but it's never been sustained. It's always like they've been knocked back very quickly and they can't recover. So there hasn't been anything to really grasp onto, anything to really grab and say, look, yeah, we've fully turned the corner, and that's the issue. That's the biggest thing. And there isn't, as you said, there isn't performances to grasp. There isn't things that you can look at and say, well, look, this is looking good. We're coming together. We maybe just need this. We maybe just need that. We're heading into a January and most people don't know what we need because we need so much. And that, I think, is damning. So I'm sorry. It's difficult at the moment after two extremely bad results and two extremely poor performances to see anything other than being 14 points behind and in a fight for third. And in second, or sorry, being third and pushing, trying to get second. And that's exactly what it is at the moment. Yeah.
I think we spoke, Stevie, after the defeats away at Kilmarnock and Aberdeen, which were end of October, beginning of November time. We spoke then about the fact that the circumstances around Clement and I think even then the narrative was, well, I think the two previous managers have lost their jobs for less than that, but the narrative around Clement was slightly different, and the situation off the pitch was very different, namely the amount of flux that happened at executive level. But we said then that if Clement is going to earn that trust back, if he's going to earn that belief back, he basically needs to be point perfect up until the Old Firm on January 2nd, probably needs to win the cup final or that game on January 2nd to have a big win and breathe a bit of life into the season. And up until that cup final, the Rangers have been a little bit better domestically. But since then, Stevie, I mean, Rangers are going into that Old Firm game with the possibility of being 17 points behind. And a lot of focus will be on Patrick Stewart, newly appointed CEO, who's just come into the building. What is he going to do next? Because again, at what point does that, are you not seeing enough progress? And there isn't enough progress at the moment. Now you can say that there's been injuries. It will be interesting to see what Clement says in the press after. But if the pressure was big now, Stevie, it's absolutely. Sorry, if the pressure was big before, it's absolutely huge now, because, as I say, if you're the potential of going 17 points behind in a title race that has never really been a title race, but a title race in the second day of a new year is unthinkable for people, and they won't believe in a project that's that has a team in that state. We're kind of going round in circles here, but I think that is a predominant point, that when you're not seeing enough to suggest the long-term picture isn't going to improve, that pressure is only going to increase as it is just now.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest, I think the majority of the support now will want change. It's only my opinion, but I think that change has to come, whether it comes now or it comes after Celtic or it comes after Hibs away. It's going to now happen, in my opinion, because unfortunately we're looking at a run of fixtures where you're going presently. I'm not sure we can win those games. or take anything out of them, and that's really damning. The unfortunate thing for us is that you're facing a pretty rampant Celtic team who, unfortunately, will smell blood coming into that, and we seem so fragile at the moment that it's difficult to even think about that at the moment. And the thing is, Joshua, as well, is that I would ask, how many people watching this show think that a victory over Celtic fixes things or shows them that we're going on the right direction? Because we could most likely go to Hibs the game after it and be back to talking about this. And it doesn't matter now if Philip Clement goes on 6 games winning in a row. As soon as he loses one, people will be back to the same point of, we aren't seeing it with this manager and we don't see enough, because that's exactly how it went with Gio and it's exactly how it went with Michael Beale. I remember Michael Beale getting beat by by Celtic, and he won 4 in the bounce. And then as soon as we got beat by Aberdeen, people were like, well, he has to go. And they wanted him out after Celtic, but it slightly quietened, and then first defeat, and that was him again. This is how it will go now for Philippe Clement. Johnny described it as being, after Dundee United, as being a dead man walking on this very, very show. And unfortunately, in my opinion, is that I don't see a way out for Philippe Clement. He's not going to be able to go on a sustained run that's going to take the pressure off him. He's not going to deliver any signs of tangible progress that's going to be enough to pacify people now. It's over to Patrick Stewart and the boardroom, who should be looking at this moment in time for a contingency plan of what they're going to do next. Doesn't matter if it's tonight or it's Thursday night or it's Sunday after away at Easter Road. This is now becoming an inevitability where the pressure and the noise will be so much that they have to answer the question on Philippe Clement and on his future.
Yeah, and to come back on that, Stevie, that's the issue, isn't it? Because Rangers, and by all accounts, that's why Patrick Stewart is going to be given the responsibility a CEO should have, and he will have the final say as opposed to a chairman. But Rangers have, for a number of years, relied on managers getting them out of situations, and a good manager takes you a long way. But I think what we've seen at Rangers in the last 3 seasons is that trusting a manager to kind of get you out of a situation that is so deep, and as the consequence of, I think, so many years of bad decisions is only going to take you so far. The same point, Stevie, would stand if hypothetically Clement's tenure at Rangers had gone the other way and he was getting pinched for a job by a different club. Who is in charge of that process to safeguard the club, safeguard Rangers beyond one managerial term? That is I think an issue that Rangers have had for numerous years. It's not exclusive to now, but it's why they keep ending up in this pattern. As you can imagine, Stevie, a lot of angry comments, and it will get through a few of them. William saying Josh, Rangers is not a project. I agree with that, William. A point more being that I don't know what you think on this, Stevie, but
yeah, but it's what the manager's called it. That's what he's called it. Whether or not we agree with it, and we don't. And there's, you can say what you want about Joshua and I, and we're reporting what he said. He said it's a project. He said it's a long-term thing, and he says it's a building block and things like that. And the point being behind that, Joshua, I think, is if it is that, you need to see tangible progress, which we're not seeing.
Yeah, no, it made my point for me, so thank you. The point being that if Rangers were not going to win the league title this season, or if they have lost games away from home, you need to see a tangible reason that's going to be different in the future. The signs need to be more positive if the results are not. Craig saying that Clement has not given fans a reason to believe. Andy very frustrated, saying he's been a season ticket holder for 26 years and he's not going on Thursday because he has seen enough. And again, Stevie, before Christmas time, you thought if Clement could get through these 2 games and get to that Old Firm, there was a possibility there to maybe change the narrative a little bit. But he's in a position now, I think, I agree with you on that Michael Beale point, where sometimes you just get a feel about where a club are at. And, you or I weren't at the game today. Chris is at the game, but I even thought you could sense it from the noise, the TV noise from the away fans, when people don't believe that something is going to change. That is a dangerous place for clubs to to be when fans feel like that. And that's kind of the reality, isn't it, at the moment? Even if Rangers were able to get an Old Firm result, which feels very far away at the moment, I don't know how much that would actually change the belief, it seems. And is that a consequence of Clement not playing his strongest team in these two games? I mean, to put it back to you, Stevie, if you were in Clement's shoes, and okay, you have to rotate players. We can't just pretend that. I know the sports science argument, maybe it's not being communicated very well, but if Clement could go back in time, would he not start maybe his strongest teams in those games against St Mirren and Motherwell, and then try and, I don't know, rotate later in the game? I guess that relies on Rangers starting games away from home in a way that we've not seen throughout the entirety of this season, really.
This is where it becomes problematic for me, because I don't believe that he's carried out things on the park the way he said he would off it. He said that James Tavernier wouldn't play 90 minutes. We've got to bed in Dujon Sterling. He can't play every game at right back. We can't do this, we can't do that. And these guys have had to come in and play 90 minutes. And a lot of the things that he's saying don't make sense. A lot of the things that he said previously don't make sense, that people are now bringing up on social media. I see it, comments that he's made about how he's going to make us fitter, about how he's going to do this. And I think everybody's at the point now, Joshua, where they're just tired of, even if a victory over Celtic did come along, and I'm like, it's almost at this moment a complete long shot, and we don't like saying that. And like the boy that says he's had a season ticket for 26 years, I've been going for nearly 30 as a season ticket holder, Joshua, and it's difficult for me to see anything either. And I just think everybody's at the point now where everybody's like, it's done. Could you just make the decision so that we can move on now and go and see what's next, and try and galvanise us a wee bit? Because, like, I think it was Andy that said he's not going to go. Unfortunately, what's going to happen now is people just won't go. There'll be an apathy around it. The attendances will dwindle, and people will just get fed up until there is protests and things like that. And in order for it not to go that way, Clement needs to go 10, 15, 20 games on the trot winning. He needs to get good results and good performances. And how likely is that under what we're seeing if we can't go to St Mirren and we can't go to Motherwell? And this isn't, by the way, 10 weeks, 2 months, 3 months into his tenure. This is over a year into his tenure. He knows how good Kieran Dowell is. He knows what Ravi Matondo can give you. He knows what Cyril Dessers can do up front. And he's reverting back to the same things that don't work. That was the problem against St Mirren. We both spoke about it. The selection up front. That was the problem again today. Not one person on that selection today thought that was a good idea. Cortez in from 45 minutes of B-team football, who played, in a game, Johnny and I commented on it at the time, is miles away from being ready. Kieran Dowell, who's almost like a weird Hamid Namucci guy, who just completely comes in from the blue, and then you don't see him for 2 months, and then he shuttles back in again out of nowhere to produce the same level of performance which we know he's capable of. And I'm not highlighting these guys and blaming them. I'm not. What I'm highlighting is that Philippe Clement, over a year into his tenure, is making mistakes and doing things that should have been highlighted to him after 6 weeks in the job. These guys aren't up to it. Why are we continually reverting to them? I would have a more faith in him today that if he went with Zach Lovelace wide and it didn't work, than going with somebody like Kieran Dowell, who we know is incapable of performing to the level we go to. And that's why there's so much frustration. 2-0 down at half time, and all my messages just said, and some of them from ex-players in that, saying, how predictable. Because we all can see it, except for the man who's putting it out there. And that's why, Joshua, people have lost complete faith. And not only that, if you want to be really simplistic and ignore all the press conferences, ignore all the stuff, if you can't get the team right and you can't get them performing to a level, then people will lose faith anyway. And we're well beyond that now.
Yeah, and I think there was a stat on Sky which people will have heard. Rangers have scored fewer goals. I think it's away from home at this stage. It's their worst. I'll start that again. Their worst goals away from home in the league record since 1970. I think it was. It's now 8 9 goals in 9 games. Maybe that's now changed if it's went up to 9. I don't know. Just before we finish, Stevie, Chris and Derek will be on in the morning. Hamza Egaman I tweeted out that he kind of grabbed that game unlike you've seen many Rangers, and if you stand by that point, how often have you watched a Rangers game like that in the last 3-4 seasons, and responsibilities being passed on, and it's been about crossed balls and square passes, and I thought Egaman went and tried to wrestle that game back for Rangers. Shouldn't be missed those 2 fantastic strikes. I don't think there was, if you're speaking about players and individuals, I don't think there was enough players out there who had that kind of desire to take responsibility to try and turn the result. Again, it probably shows that it should have been Egaman up there from the start, because Danilo and Dessers actually both had good opportunities in that first half. They both resulted in weak finishes, but there just wasn't enough of that type of. If we're talking about away from the manager for a second, we're just talking about individual performances. I didn't think enough players took responsibility and ownership of that game like Hamza Egaman did, as one of the youngest members of that team from the bench at halftime.
Yeah, he listened to 2 really good finishes, left and right footed. I think first one came out and it's an instinctive finish. Second one is a lovely bit of skill, actually cutting in and bending it inside. And look, fair play to him. I thought he was one of the ones that, and that's the thing, when it comes to team selection, I'm not sure that Hamza Egaman had a really good game in Paisley. He missed a bit of a sitter. He missed a bit of a chance against Dundee where he hit the bar. But he's something that we don't have, which is a rawness, a kind of excitement, somebody that is capable of doing something a wee bit different, which comes with youth. I would rather see him up front. If he's not able to play 90 minutes, play him for 60, play him for a half, then bring him off, knowing perhaps that we would be in a better position. None of it, unfortunately, with regards to him, kind of makes sense. It's just, all credit to him, but it's drop points. It's not anything to celebrate as such. We can credit him, and we absolutely will. And good. Look, he has to start the next game, etc. Really well done to him. I thought Tierney tried his hardest to look for movement and to get involved. He dropped deep. He got onto it. Neither of them were at fault for what happened today. You can maybe chuck Raskin in there and stuff like that, but the back 4, Joshua, when you think about performances of a goalkeeper, a centre half, and stuff like that, it was all a bit of a mess, unfortunately. And it's just, it's really difficult. I think it's difficult to, to sit here and credit, and we've drawn 2-2 in a game where we've dropped more points and we're 14 points behind. It's not in any way acceptable in the slightest.
No, and we should mention before we go, loads to cover, but Jack Butland, probably in the most difficult moment, I think, of his Rangers career at the moment, makes that mistake for the first goal. He makes a mistake for the third goal, which is chopped off for offside. Obviously, Tony Watt scored, but I think it was Casey was offside in the build-up. The first goal proper doesn't win the header, and he stops. The second Motherwell goal is a lot of individual skill, but again, Rangers defending from that area. It's probably a continuation of what we saw on Boxing Day, just to finish with the defence, Stevie. And would you agree with that Butland at the moment is in that it's definitely the worst form we've seen from him in a Rangers shirt, because he's made a mistake for the first goal there today, obviously made a mistake for the penalty against St Mirren, and someone who has generally been consistent in a Rangers shirt. He did have that dip last season, but he culpable for that goal today, as he was to concede the penalty when St Mirren opened to scoring on Boxing Day.
I think the issue with Jack at the moment is his individual mistakes are getting punished. Mm-hmm. He's not infallible as a goalkeeper. I'm not sure, Joshua, today that the first goal was his fault. It's a really poor header by Robin Propper, who could go either side or just get distance on it that doesn't. Leon Balogun is really good at clearing his lines like that, and probably would have been able to deal with that. At that point, Jack Butland's then got a 1-on-1 where he's 50-50 chance. I don't know what he's supposed to do. Does he stay on his line, try and save it? Does he come all the way and it goes through him? He comes to try and narrow the angle, which is what every goalkeeper is told to do, and he's unlucky because it goes through him. I'm loath to think that that's a Butland mistake. The second one certainly isn't. But yeah, the third goal, he's completely caught out by, he should just tip that over. You help it over the bar and he kind of leaves it. And then he makes a good save and it gets turned in. And thankfully for us, it's off. I think he's weak with the one he punches in. It is a foul because his hand's across his face. But you're looking at that going, but other than that, he came and took crosses and things like that. And, Jack Butland isn't an Andy Gorham. He isn't Alan McGregor. He isn't a Stephen Kloss or whatever, but he's a very competent keeper. And he's probably feeling it for what he's seen in front of him defensively and things as well. And I'm not making mistakes for him, or sorry, I'm not making excuses for him. I just don't. I think we're very quick to be maybe pointing out things too strenuously that isn't really there with Jack Butland. I think,
Stevie, I think what you'd say though is that
that's doing fine, Joshua. That's making a few mistakes that are being highlighted, but asking for him to be dropped and things like that, I'm not there yet with Jack Butland. I don't think the goals today were his fault. Is he infallible? Is he making mistakes? Yeah, but I don't see how today was on him.
Where I agree with you is I think if you look at the goal, if you look at the way he concedes that penalty, I think he is on his toes more and probably more apprehensive because Proper's making those errors in front of him. And that's the first mistake. And I agree with that tonight as well, because Sterling's trying to cover for Proper. Proper's header is the first issue. He stops. And I think if he doesn't stop and ask for a handball, then maybe he has time to close the gap. It's his man who gets through. So, no, I agree with you. And obviously, two goals are chopped off, but again, very descriptive of the day Rangers have had. But listen, we'll leave it there. We will go and get the reaction from Philippe Clement, which will be up on the Rangers Review YouTube and website very soon. Chris and Derek will be live with you tomorrow at 9:30 to discuss the further fallout from more drop points for Rangers. That's the headline, 2-2 draw with Motherwell now 14 points behind at the top of the Scottish Premiership. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.